Welcome to ReThink You, bringing you ideas, inspiration, and motivation to start living the life you were created to live. Here is your host, author, trainer, speaker, and coach, and founder of ReThink You, Kim Levings.
Well, hello and welcome back to the ReThink You podcast. I'm excited to welcome today Kim Stewart, who with Athena Coaching and Consulting. And Kim brings over 30 years of business, nonprofit, and leadership experience to help others grow and succeed. She specializes in wellness and business coaching, staff and organizational alignment and development, strategic planning. You name it, Kim's done it. She helps leaders calm the chaos when they're leading a business or a nonprofit. And by focusing on that organization and aligning of processes, leaders are able to gain traction for their business while they find time to focus on what's important to them. I'm excited too because I met Kim in a local group. She's local to my city, and she came to Colorado from Iowa. And Kim and her family really enjoy the outdoors and the beautiful weather and natural resources in the area. So Kim, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And why don't you start by telling us some of your story?
Well, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that introduction, and I appreciate you having me on your podcast here. So, a little bit about me. I grew up in Iowa and was raised on a farm in a small town, and so being raised on a farm teaches you a lot of valuable lessons about hard work, about commitment to community, caring for others. And I think those are things that have stuck with me throughout my entire career. I graduated with a class of 26, and I always just like to throw that in because people then understand how small my small town was. Went away to college really to escape a small town and also get off the farm. And there I studied all kinds of things. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to move on to something different. And I was a math major for a while. I was an art major. I was in nutrition for a bit, and I ended up landing in recreation. And when I first started with that, I thought I was going to be Julie McCoy, the cruise director from Love Boat. And that sounded really cool. But then I realized I would have to live on a boat all the time, and that just didn't really resonate with me. And so as I was exploring what else I could do with recreation major, which just sounds like fun, right? I kind of fell into learning about nonprofit organizations and youth serving agencies. And so graduated with an emphasis in youth agency administration and health and wellness. And so a natural fit for that was to look to the YMCAs, which both serve youth and help people with healthy living. And that started my nonprofit career. I moved around a little bit, was down near St. Louis. I was in Chicago, moved back to Iowa to be closer to my folks as they were getting older, and settled in Des Moines, Iowa. And I was there for about 20 years, working my way up through the YMCA and, strengthening communities and building teams, and got to the point where I was supervising executive directors and helping them with their center operations and their team building and their financial development, board development, all of that kind of thing. Circumstances led to some financial difficulties for that YMCA, and my position was eliminated back in 2017. And from there, I started my own business for a little while, but I never really intended for that to be like my thing. It was just sort of a side hustle while I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Got involved with another nonprofit for a little while, which had a fabulous mission of helping to narrow the childcare gap in small towns, small communities. So I really loved the mission of that organization, but I didn't necessarily love the culture. And, I went from a YMCA where I saw hundreds and hundreds of people every day to an office where sometimes there was one other person there. And so that wasn't really my jam. And I missed the why. And so that's what brought us from Iowa out to Colorado. Was I secured a position with the YMCA of the Pikes Peak region, I was a district executive director, so I was providing leadership for the downtown YMCA directly, as well as 2 other centers in the area. And, doing what I'd been doing for a long time, developing community, building board, developing staff, all that kind of stuff. And then COVID hit, and it hit YMCAs and health centers really hard, since people couldn't go to them. And then when they were able to reopen, there's a lot of people who were not comfortable with that. And so again, lots of positions eliminated, including mine. And so at that point, I took a good look at what I wanted to do next. I considered going into some other nonprofit work. And then just actually in 1 week, I had coffee, lunch, and drinks with 3 different friends. And all 3 of them said, well, why don't you try starting your own business? You've got all this leadership and business and management experience. Why don't you, put your shingle out and give it a try? And the first 2 people who said it, I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to lead people, and I want to, be a part of something bigger. And then when the 3rd person mentioned it, I just kind of stopped and thought, you know what? If 3 people are going to say this to me in 1 week, someone is trying to tell me something. And so I need to stop listening to the stories that I'm telling myself and start considering what my other options are. And so I took about a month to research what that would mean. And in August of last year, I started Athena Coaching and Consulting, really drawing on my experience of wellness coaching and business coaching, as well as supervising and leading executive directors for what was really about the last 10 years of my career with the YMCA. And so, like I said, I started in August, and I've been building momentum and getting all my pieces in place. And that brings us to today.
Wow, what a great story. Thank you so much, Kim. And I think I'm struck by the fact that you had a really clear idea of your purpose and your passion right from your college days. And I think that, that's a blessing. Many people, perhaps many of the listeners, will think, well, I wish I knew what I was supposed to be doing. So I'm going to circle back around to advice you may have for anyone who doesn't have that clear sense of what they're passionate about. But as you look now at Athena Coaching and Consulting, what would you say is the big picture vision? What's getting you excited, and what has moved this business for you from being a side hustle to being center stage?
Sure. Thank you for that question. I think drawing on being, again, brought up on a farm and being taught, values of helping your neighbor and helping others and being involved in philanthropic organizations that make our community a better place. I think that in large part informed what I wanted to do with my life and informed my nonprofit career. And then leaving that, that sector and deciding to go out on my own, I think I've brought a lot of that with me. I don't have a personal or business goal to grow and be huge and get to this point where my business is sold. I just want to help people. And I know what it was like when I was a young business leader and a young program director or a young executive, and all the doubt that comes with it and the frustrations of not knowing how to do it or not knowing how to make good decisions, and getting confused between what's right for me versus what's right for the organization. I remember that really clearly. And so I feel like now I have this opportunity to help not necessarily just young executives. I think it always helps to have an outside set of eyes, take a look at it and say, well, have you thought about this? Or even if they have thought about it, they maybe are resisting pushing themselves in that direction. And I think that's the kind of thing that I can bring to a company, is helping them as that outside set of eyes. My family likes to call me, I'm relentlessly optimistic. And so I think I bring that to what could be really frustrating or hard conversations, because a lot of times the challenges are, they have to do with people, or, people that we care about in our company or our business, but yet we have to have these crucial conversations that might be icky and yucky. But bringing that positive attitude and the future focused, the positive outcome focused point of view to clients is a piece of what makes my skill set a little bit different maybe than other people who do what I do, as well as just, like I said at the beginning of this, my passion for helping other people to succeed.
That's wonderful, because I think that that's so important, and that's something you and I share about looking at the positive outcomes, and as opposed, it's not really a Pollyanna approach. It's more about saying just focus on what you can do rather than what you can't, and focus on what you do have. So that perspective, many times people can't get that because they're so deep in the forest they can't see the trees, and it sounds like you help them not just see the trees, but also have a good attitude about the trees, and gain new perspective. And can you think of a time, though, perhaps in your life when you faced a challenge where perhaps you were stuck in a forest of your own, and it took somebody else helping you get perspective? How did you get yourself out of that jam, if that's ever happened to you?
Well, I'm sure it has. That's a really great question. Thank you.
We can come back to it too. I don't want to put you on a spot, but I know at times, sometimes we are our own worst critics, and but we've learned things. The fact that you're so good at that tells me that it's come from a life experience somewhere along the line where you learned to have that positive outcome focus. It doesn't come naturally.
Yeah. Well, I will say, when I was younger in my career, I was working in Chicago, and I kind of side mentioned it. My folks were getting older, and their health wasn't great, and that was weighing heavily on me. But because I am so positive, I sometimes am just like, well, this is the path I'm going. I'm going to force myself through it no matter what. And I think reflecting back, I can say that it was having an impact on the work that I was doing, my attitude towards my work, and all of that. Just knowing that I probably wasn't where I needed to be personally at that time. And so, I don't even recall what exactly it was, but there was one point where all of a sudden I was like, why am I here? I mean, I love Chicago, and I loved my position and the people I worked with, and I had a great friend network, but something clicked. And I remember being like, well, why wouldn't I just move back to Iowa? I can figure this out. And I can, from that point forward, it was like, okay, now I'm putting these plans in place. So it took some trigger. And like I said, I can't recall exactly what it was, but it just shifted my mindset from, I'm going down this path, I'm going to be successful at that path, to, well, that's not the only path. I think I need to find another path. And then, as soon as that switch clicked, I created a new plan and made that happen.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, because I think that's the biggest lesson, that our needs and our values and where our focus is can shift depending on life circumstances. Kim, as you think about things, though, what gifts and talents have you recognized in yourself over the years that have strengthened you in this career path?
Sure. I think that something that I have in me a little bit naturally, but I've worked really hard to develop, excuse me, is my listening ability. And, everybody listens all the time, but I think that I am exceptionally good at really deep listening and asking those next questions and drilling down and finding out, the problem behind the problem, or the issue behind the issue. For example, in wellness, a lot of times people will say, I need to start a workout routine, but I just don't have time. Well, what does that mean, you don't have time? Well, I'm not getting the support I need at home so that someone else can watch the kids while I run to the gym for an hour. Or I don't have the finances to commit to a gym membership, or whatever. And then why don't you have that? And drilling down and drilling down and drilling down. And so I think that that's something that I bring to my clients, is that relentless probing to find out, okay, well, what's the real issue? Yeah, every business owner ever, I'm sure, has said, I don't have enough time. Well, why not? What are you spending your time on? Let's talk about this. And what can you take off your plate? How can you delegate, and how can you elevate yourself? Or how can you just take those things off your schedule that aren't pointed directly and strongly at your getting you to your goal? How can we eliminate some of those things that aren't going to help you get there? So I think that probably that's my superpower, is just really deep listening and probing to help people find out really what the true issues are that they're dealing with.
Right, that's so true, and I'm pleased that you mentioned that, Kim, because especially the time excuse. I say, we all have the same amount of time, so how come successful people get a lot more done in the same amount of time? It's not a time issue; it's a priority issue, right? Or it's a values issue. So I want to sort of take a little bit of a left turn here and say, considering your experience in nonprofit leadership in general, and just I know that there may be some listeners out there that are interested. Are there any common themes or challenges that you see that are unique to the nonprofit world, as opposed, because I think that they have a unique culture and leadership approach? If you just had to think of, one or two issues that you think people could learn from to develop an understanding of the world of nonprofit leadership.
Sure. So, nonprofit organizations are businesses just like for-profit. I think that the key differences are, in addition to, running a team and producing whatever you produce, managing your finances, all of that kind of stuff. On top of that, in the nonprofit world, you have board leadership that you need to deal with, recruiting volunteers, raising funds, and that whole piece of it that's really unique to the nonprofit sector. They aren't all that much different than recruiting staff and leadership, than engaging your staff in activities that are going to advance your business. And I consider fundraising to be very similar to sales, in that you are selling your vision for how you're going to make a difference in the world, and asking people to buy into that instead of buying a widget or whatever. So I think that those are unique to the nonprofit sector, but not necessarily all that much different than what the for-profit sector deals with. I think the other piece is, and maybe where some nonprofit leaders get into trouble, is, people who work in nonprofits tend to have just really, really huge hearts and a high level of compassion and caring, those are all fantastic qualities, but sometimes those get in the way of making good, solid business decisions. Sometimes we hold on to a staff person because they've been with us for so long, or they love the organization so much, or their passion is fabulous, or they have this going on personally. And again, all good reasons to want to support someone, but keeping them in your operations, if they are holding you back, or if they're a roadblock to success, those are not acceptable decisions to make. So that's something I've had the opportunity on many occasions to help executives with, because they care so much about their team, and you build a team and you love them and you nurture them, and it's a lot of work, and then you have a component that's not working. Sometimes there's a tendency to want to just keep trying instead of addressing the issues. And again, that's something, that an outside set of eyes can put a spotlight on that and say, well, you keep coming back to the fact that Joe is the one who's holding you back. Let's talk more about that. So I would say those are the two things that really probably differentiate, but not so much, because I know there's people with big hearts in for-profit organizations who struggle with the same thing.
Right. I think that's a common leadership thing sometimes, where you get, highly compassionate leaders. And I remember saying to a leader years ago that You do somebody a disservice if you don't correct them, because they'll never learn. So avoiding the tough conversations is actually doing them a disservice. And when I reframed it, he saw it from a different perspective. So you're right. That really is the big difference with nonprofits, the fact that they have to raise money, and a lot of their staffing are actually volunteers. So different challenges.
Yep.
What other life lessons have you learned along the way, or things that you know now that you wished you knew when you were younger? Any other tips that you'd like to share with the listeners, Kim?
Sure. I think it's an old adage, but it's so great that I use it all the time. And I have teenage children, so I use it with them a lot. But just the fact that you can choose your attitude about everything, and that's going to frame how everything in your life kind of plays out. So, you know, I'm not positive because my life has been perfect and sunshiny and nothing bad's ever happened. I'm positive because I choose to be positive. And when people choose or just don't think about what kind of attitude they want to have about things, that's when they get caught up in the fact that, oh, poor me, or, oh, this happened to me. This occurred with my business. The pandemic hit. Woe is us. And I don't want to diminish that the pandemic hasn't been truly, truly awful for many people, but I also know that there's a lot of people who have been hit hard by the pandemic, and they've looked at it and they said, oh, okay, well, that's a bummer. How are we going to reframe things and make it better and grow and learn and evolve? So while I know that that gets said all the time, it's something that I teach my kids. It's something I've taught my staff throughout my career. There's a class that I teach right now just on wellness and connecting wellness to everything that happens in your life. And I think that all of that stems back to just choosing your attitude, choosing how you're going to react to things, and choosing how you're going to show up. So
That's so true.
But true.
Oh yeah, no, and I think that that's what you and I share in common when we first spoke. That just that sense that everybody has the power over their choices and the power over their attitude. So you're right. It may be an age-old adage, but we need to be told things over and over and over again, because we tend to forget what's important, because it doesn't come naturally. Our default tends to be negative, stress-focused. And it's interesting, Kim, how you've combined, the health and wellness aspect together with organizational leadership. What would you say is on your immediate get it done list? What's on your focus task list right now?
Yeah, there's lots of little things, but I think the big thing that I really want to put some energy into is creating a class on listening skills, but specifically around improving diversity and inclusion in a staff team, a leadership team, that kind of stuff. I've gotten some notes together, and I'm thinking about how to utilize that very, very important skill, help people develop it, and then connect that to the fact that, the way that you get to understand people who are different from you is by listening to them, by asking questions, by being open to whatever they say, and just learning. So that's a program. I'm not really sure what I want to do with it. It might be a course, it might be a webinar, it might be a mini course that I just give away. I haven't decided exactly the format that I want to pursue with that, but I'm really excited about this idea. And just with everything that's been going on in our country over the last year or longer, probably forever, really, but it's come to a boiling point. I think our ability to understand other people and to care about understanding other people is just really important. And I would love to help companies who maybe haven't thought about it in the past, or who have thought about it, but they don't know where to start. I think starting with listening is a beautiful place to begin.
That is a great mission, and I would love to hear more as that develops for you, because I think that is a desperate need. And you're right, it's all about listening and understanding people that see the world and live in the world in a different way than we do. So powerful stuff. Thank you. Anything else that you would like to share with the listeners, Kim, as they think about this podcast? What's like one or two nuggets that you would love them to take away that you haven't already mentioned, or something that you'd like to emphasize?
Sure. Well, I think that, and we may have mentioned this already, but when you're running a business, especially if your business is primed to grow, it's got great potential, it can be overwhelming. And we get caught up in doing a lot of things that are not really focused on where we want to take our business. And I think that that's something that I am good at observing and helping to demystify. So if your number one job is to triple in size in the next 5 years, if that's where you want to take things, but you have individuals or departments going off in other directions, you're not going to get there. So I really love to help businesses align all of their people, all of the processes, all of their accountabilities with where they want to take their business. I think the other thing that kind of goes along with that is if, and my kind of sweet spot client is those businesses who are in the 10 up to 50, 60, 70 people businesses and growing. But as those folks have started out maybe as solopreneurs and they've grown and now they have people working for them and they have departments and all of that, oftentimes they started their business because they were good at whatever the business does. If it's a service, if it's a product they're producing, whatever, but they maybe don't know how to structure that business and put the pieces in place, or how to supervise a staff team or create accountability for everyone in their business. And so that's another piece that I really love to help businesses with, is helping them as they've gone from being, oh, it's me and my family or me and my buddies and we're doing this thing, to now it's me and now I have 20 people whose livelihood relies on my business being successful, but I don't know how to make sure that we're all moving in the same direction. And in fact, I have a freebie giveaway. It's I call it the Calm the Chaos quiz. And it's just a 15-question quiz that companies can look through and they can see, are we on track with this or are we off track? And if you've got all those pieces in place, you're probably going pretty strongly in the right direction. But if you have one or two or three that you're feeling pretty good about, there's a good chance that I could help with, help get things aligned, help get that leadership structure in place that's going to take you where you want to go.
That's great stuff. Thank you. I still love that, calm the chaos, because that's exactly what it feels like. And I would also just call out your use of the word solopreneurs or solopreneurs, because that's so many people start out that way. And I've seen businesses fail when the founder just wants to keep doing what they're doing, that they're good at, and the company can never grow beyond that. So great call out there, Kim. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm pleased that you talked about Calm the Chaos quiz. So if listeners want to find you, we will make sure we put that information and your link in the show notes, but it's Athena-coco.com, stands for coaching and consulting. And I'd encourage you to go visit Kim there and, take advantage of her free quiz. So any closing thoughts, Kim, as we sign off here?
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been just really fun. And, I love to talk about how I can help companies get where they want to. Again, like we've both said, it doesn't have to be chaos. By simplifying and putting some really fairly simple tools in place, you can get yourself moving in the direction that you want to. And when that happens, you see growth, and you also find more time to focus on the things that are important to you as a business leader. So that's what I'm here to help with.
Great. Really good stuff. So thank you so much, Kim, for sharing your gems. And I'm sure that listeners will want to connect with you, and I look forward to hearing more about those connections. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.